The courtroom falls silent as the judge enters, his presence commanding respect. But not for her. Tiffany Kensington, a spoiled socialite dripping in designer labels, barely glances up from her phone. She sighs, rolls her eyes, and lounges back in her seat like she's at a fashion show, not facing serious charges. Judge Harris, a seasoned and no-nonsense man, watches her with a calm but knowing gaze. He's seen all kinds in his courtroom, but this one might just take the cake. As he begins to speak, Tiffany interrupts, smirking, dismissive, convinced her family's wealth will get her off the hook. Gasps ripple through the room. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Did she really just say that? But Judge Harris doesn't flinch. Instead, he leans forward, delivering a sentence so unexpected, so perfectly fitting, that the entire courtroom is left in stunned silence. And Tiffany, she's not smirking anymore. Tiffany's confident smirk fades as murmurs fill the courtroom. She glances at her lawyer, expecting reassurance, but even he looks uneasy. Judge Harris remains calm, his expression unreadable. The air in the room feels heavier now, every pair of eyes locked onto her. Tiffany isn't used to this. She's used to control, to getting her way with a single phone call. Her father, one of the most powerful businessmen in the city, has always bailed her out. But as she looks at Judge Harris, something in his stare tells her this time is different. The prosecutor clears her throat, flipping through pages. "Miss Kensington, do you understand the charges against you?" Tiffany groans, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Obviously," she mutters. A sharp silence follows. Judge Harris folds his hands. "Then you also understand," he says evenly, "that privilege doesn't place you above the law." Tiffany stiffens. For the first time, doubt flickers in her eyes. Tiffany shifts in her seat, suddenly uncomfortable. She's never had to face real consequences before, and the weight of the judge's words lingers in the air. Her father always made problems disappear, but right now, there's no reassuring phone call, no expensive lawyer whispering guarantees in her ear. Judge Harris isn't playing by the rules she's used to. Across the room, the prosecutor watches her carefully, as if waiting for the moment Tiffany realizes she's out of her depth. The evidence against her is strong, but it's her attitude that's making things worse. Even her lawyer looks frustrated now, his fingers tapping against the table. Judge Harris leans back, studying her. "Tell me, Miss Kensington, do you believe the law applies to everyone equally?" Tiffany scoffs. "I believe money talks." Gasps ripple through the courtroom again. Judge Harris doesn't react. His face remains unreadable. But the slight pause before he speaks next makes Tiffany's stomach drop. The courtroom is dead silent. Even the scribbling of the court reporter has stopped. Tiffany feels a sudden tightness in her throat, but she lifts her chin, masking it with defiance. Judge Harris rests his hands on the bench, his gaze never leaving her. "You believe money talks," he repeats, his voice calm but sharp. "And what exactly is it saying for you right now, Miss Kensington?" Tiffany doesn't answer. For the first time, she feels something unfamiliar, doubt. Her father's absence feels heavier now. She expected a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine, but this is different. Judge Harris exhales, shaking his head. "Privilege without accountability is dangerous," he says, "and it seems you've never faced the weight of your actions." The tension is suffocating. Tiffany shifts again, crossing her arms. "So what? You're gonna make an example out of me?" she snaps, her voice cracking slightly. Judge Harris finally leans forward. "No, Miss Kensington," he says, his tone steady. "I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget." The courtroom watches, breathless. Tiffany swallows hard. For the first time, she realizes she might not be able to buy her way out of this one. Tiffany's heart pounds, but she refuses to let it show. She's been in tough situations before, ones where charm, connections, or a well-placed phone call smoothed everything over. But this time, none of that seems to matter. Judge Harris isn't budging. And then, in one final twist, the woman reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and tried to take a photo of Maya, as though capturing the moment might somehow reverse the loss of power she'd just experienced. But before she could, the phone slipped from her hands and fell to the floor, shattering into pieces with a sharp crack. The bus fell silent once again, this time in the wake of an almost poetic conclusion. The woman stood there for a moment longer, staring down at the broken phone, before slumping back into her seat, defeated. Maya sat there, feeling a quiet satisfaction as the bus continued its journey. The tension had finally broken, but not in the way anyone had expected. The woman's attempt to regain control had crumbled, and in that small, unexpected twist, Maya had found the resolution she hadn't even known she needed. As the bus rolled on, Maya's eyes flicked over to the man who had stepped in to defend her. He gave her a small, knowing nod, and for the first time in a long while, Maya felt like she wasn't alone. The bus continued its journey, the once tense atmosphere now replaced with a calm, almost surreal quiet. Maya leaned back into her seat, the weight of the situation finally lifting off her shoulders. The woman sat quietly, her earlier anger now replaced by a defeated silence, her broken phone forgotten on the floor. The passengers who had watched the ordeal unfold began to return to their own worlds, the discomfort easing as the tension disappeared. Maya glanced at the man who had stood up for her. He gave her a small, reassuring smile before returning to his seat, but something unspoken passed between them. In that moment, they both knew that standing up to injustice didn't always require big actions, but sometimes simply refusing to let it slide was enough. As the bus pulled into the final stop, Maya stepped off with a sense of empowerment. She hadn't just taken a seat, she'd reclaimed her space, her dignity, and maybe even reminded everyone around her that respect wasn't optional.